you talked, John, about reducing your inputs, and you kind of referenced that maybe your yields are even moving up as you're reducing your inputs. Can you give us a little more on that, on your beans or your corn?
Well, this last year, on beans specifically, as I reduce commercial fertility, increase biology, I'm starting to see a different structure to my beans. I'm stacking nodes more. Stems are getting thicker. I knew the bean had a taproot, but when I was tilling the ground and didn't have the biology in it, I didn't have that taproot. And today I'm starting to see a deeper taproot, better nodulation. And so it's all playing into plant health, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. And so, John, you're using 0.5, 0.6, whatever units nitrogen per bushel, and you're getting how many bushels per acre on your corn?
200 this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My APH is over that, but Dave doesn't believe me, but we started out dry. So.
That's cool. And by the way, this is one of our customers that actually did the green stripes are where the Bio 100 was applied, and the light green is where it wasn't applied. So they did like an every other, kind of pass there with the application, and you can see the microbes going to work and making the nitrogen available and giving us that green response. So that's a pretty neat picture because it just shows it so vividly. And Tim, you've seen yields improve over the years as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the first year that I did Holganix, I did one half the field and the other half without, and just to see if this microbial stuff, if it was just a fluke with all that organic stuff, or if it actually worked. And on the half that I did, it bumped 50 bushels, which I know that's total bragging rights right there, or cliche, but that was, I recalibrated my monitor to make sure I was actually yielding that much. But when I went to the other side, it was right back down to the 130, 135 where it normally is. And there was 8 spots. I've never seen that sandy field hit like over 220, just briefly hit 220, and it hit over 300 8 times. And wow. I was dumbfounded. And it's like, this can't just, the Holganix, the bugs itself, the microbes, and okay, we'll try the whole field, we'll try this and that, we'll go to the heavier ground, and every time it's just amazing. That field used to average 130, 135. Like I said, I'm at 167 now. Just 5 to 7 bushels every year, more and more. It's downright exciting, and it's certainly tough to argue with, because my organic matter was 0.6 to 0.9 on that, and I don't know if they hit some extra grass or something, but they said it was a 2%. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, but it's certainly, when you look at the deep green, that I haven't seen that on my field before, especially with that low organic matter. In that sugar sand, it never should have been taken out and put into production. It probably should have stayed pasture or wild, but it is what it is, and that's what I've got. So I've got to farm it that way, and I can't even describe how awesome it's been. Just like, wow, okay, we'll just keep using this. And my fertility, my nitrogen on that field was 3/4 of a pound per bushel yield, and on sand, the co-op's telling me I need to be 1.2 to 1.4 pounds of N per acre. And I'm like, that's your money. I don't want to give that to you. I want it. So, sorry, they don't pay my mortgage. They don't pay my tractor bill. So yeah, I'm keeping that money, and this keeps going. It just breaks my heart to cut my fertility even another 10% more this year.
Yeah, that's great. Love hearing that. Thanks for sharing it. And, by the way, we, on corn, we tell you, hey, look, use our product, and we typically see a 5 to 10 bushel per acre improvement. Sometimes we see much more, as we just heard from Tim. But if you can count on that 5 to 10, reduce your fertilizer right up front, that alone will make you money each year. And we say put us on your worst ground first, and that's kind of what we just heard from Tim is, your poorer performing ground will have a bigger percentage increase But you go out to Grant, who's a lot of Grant's got some challenging ground here and there, but I think a lot of Grant's ground is pretty nice. It's about the best soil that maybe God put on this earth in some of your fields, Grant, from what I saw. But you're seeing a yield bump as well, Grant, in your rich soils as well as your poor soils.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with the tougher the conditions, the greater the yield response, and that's definitely something that we've seen. I know the first 2 years we did a lot of side-by-sides in corn, and had various situations. We had some corn on corn, first year corn, heavy black soils, timber soils, and we were anywhere from 0 bushel advantage to 9 bushel advantage on our farms, and definitely the 9 bushels came from a tough farm. We had a customer that same a couple of years ago when he first started using it. They just had a 160-acre field that was tough conditions, and they kind of like this picture, every other pass, and they did multiple ways across that field, and they were 3 to 9 bushel advantage. And anything that can be done in our part of the world where we do, I talk about our poor soils, but some of the soil types and sand conditions that are mentioned on this webinar, I mean, even our poor soils are considerably better than the conditions they're dealing with. So I don't want to make it sound like we deal with that sort of situation, but if you can get 3, 7, 9 bushel out of just changing a single product in our area, that is very, very significant. There's not a lot of products you can do that with here. And so that's what we've been telling our customers: give us your worst stuff, toughest conditions, and we'll see what the product can do there. And I'd say on average, we're more 3 to 5 bushel pretty consistently on corn, which again, that alone pays for the product, let alone the fertilizer reductions and all that sort of thing we've done. And I know on our tougher ground too, we're starting to see some. I had mentioned this, I know, previously, but we had actually a farm. We've been farming it for probably near 30 years, our family has, and we were just about at our wits' end to try to figure out and unlock the potential of what we felt this farm could be. And always had soil percolation issues. Ground would get really hard. Emergence was always a tremendously difficult thing on this farm. It's like we'd plant it and you get a hard rain, the ground would crust over, couldn't get the corn to come up. And we started cover cropping that farm a couple, 3 years ago. Last year would have been the second year for the entire farm to have Holganix. 2 years ago, we harvested record beans behind cover crops in our Holganix for that farm. And this year it was, we had a good corn crop this year, not a record corn crop. And that was the only farm that we had a record corn crop for that particular farm this year. And so that was just extremely exciting for us. We did not leave any test strips out there with Holganix. We just were believers in it and put it out. That farm got a pretty significant rainfall within 24 hours of being planted, and we thought for sure we were going to be tearing it up and replanting it. But to our surprise, we had a good enough, not a perfect, but good enough emergence to keep, and ended up having a record yield for that farm. So it's one of those things, I can't show you a number to verify like a side-by-side, but there's no question in my mind that Holganix is part of the solution that we figured out on that farm.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Grant. So you just heard, richer soils where Grant is, the challenging soils where Tim is. Obviously both places we're helping in different ways. Anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the question or the chat, and we'll have these guys answer the questions for you at the end of the presentation, if you have any. So South Dakota here, Jon, this is your neck of the woods. Tell us what's going on.
Well, this would have been in my second year, I believe. Again, you see a deeper root, and it's not quite as noticeable here, but the stem diameter is larger. That's something that I've noticed. I've also noticed that the corn stalks generally are rounder in shape, as well as larger, and that just goes to the xylem and the phloem. It helps, you're helping move nutrients up and down that stalk better.
Yeah.
And
That's great.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
2 to 5 is normally what I see. This last year, on ground that's had Holganix on it for 3 years, I did a strip trial there, and I continue to see that 5 bushel advantage to the application. So.
Yeah, that's great. Love seeing that, John. And then here's your beans, John. Similar story there.
Similar story there. You know, the stem diameter on the beans, you'll notice a larger stem diameter, which is important to support those laterals as the bean grows. You see the deeper taproot, and nodulation is very noticeable, and earlier too. Those nodules will start very early. And one thing I don't know if you can tell in here, but I've been tracking the Holganix seems to help those cotyledons stay on longer, and that tends to indicate plant health. The longer you can keep those cotyledons on your soybean, the healthier you know that soybean is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, a healthier plant's going to survive any kind of stress better, and it's going to typically have better yield, and everything's just going to work better. And that's an example of that. And John's really modest, and he probably is wincing right now because I'm showing you all this, but I can't help myself. So John, you want to tell us what's going on here, John, or you need me to do it?
So I entered the soybean contest this year for the first time in South Dakota. It was a group 2.3 bean, and obviously you can see there we won. This was on my home quarter, and it received less than 10 inches of rain this year, or this last year. So,
and you use no PRK on that, or?
I use no fertility at all, NP&K, on those beans. I used Holganix and some micronutrients, and did a micronutrient pass a couple times during the season, and that was pretty much it.
Awesome, John. Well, congratulations on that. Obviously, it's a sign of the diligence that you've had in building soil health over the years and everything you're doing. And county average, John, just to give people perspective?
Our county average is probably somewhere around 42.
Right. Well, that's pretty good.